Day 6 of testimony for Jane got a late start today in the Sean Diddy Combs criminal trial. After a lengthy chambers conference between the judge and lead attorneys, the defense was pushing to publicly name a rapper, an icon as he described him, related to a trip to Las Vegas that Jane took without Combs. And there was a freak-off involved on that trip. But why was this important? We'll take a look. Plus, testimony about an incident between Jane and Combs that turned brutally violent. Jane says she instigated it, but that Combs escalated it. I'm criminal trial attorney Sara Azari, and this is Serving Justice. All the latest in the Diddy trial today. And to help me break it all down, I'm joined by Mark O'Mara, founder and lead attorney at the O'Mara Law Group, and a good friend of the show and mine, and NewsNation field producer Tommy Christaldi, who has been in the Manhattan courthouse daily covering this trial. Thank you guys for joining me today. And I want to start off with Mark. You know, the judge ruled today, Mark, that the names in the 2024 Las Vegas trip involving a non-Diddy freak-off, in other words, it was a freak-off, but it was another rapper and his partner with an entertainer, that those names could not be disclosed. First of all, what is the basis for keeping those third-party identities out? And obviously, the court of public opinion is all about other famous folks involved. You know, they were waiting for Kid Cudi to testify. Why did the defense want this in, and why did the prosecution want this out?
Well, I think both the prosecution and the judge followed the prosecution's lead, which was there is some certain level of privacy, even in a case that is this public, that certain people have still a level of privacy that unless the defense can convince the judge that for some reason his rights for examining witnesses and his rights to confront his witnesses would be outweighed, that I think the judge is just saying, for now, at the very least, we're protecting them, we're keeping them out until someone shows me more relevance to get to their names.
Well, wouldn't the relevance be, for example, because there's this idea that, well, we have coercion for the prosecution, right? But then we have the idea that this woman was into this lifestyle. She actually was around it when Diddy was not around. And she connected this couple with one of the entertainers that she liked. So she's very much, it's not just a willing participant, but she's very involved in all this. So wouldn't that be relevant to bring in these other people? And couldn't the defense call them as their witnesses?
Well, I would say that, yes, the relevance is there. And it did come in, the fact that she was involved in these other events with other people. But I don't know that that means, since they've now testified or had testimony about this witness, right, and it's attacking her credibility, perhaps. But why drag in the other two people into this trial? I tend to agree with you that it's relevant, certainly.
I mean, I would want the rapper and his girlfriend here to testify about how much she was, well, I don't know. She wasn't really involved in the freak-off. She was kind of watching or whatever. So,
and we know, yeah. And there is that standard, right? That rule that talks about the prejudicial factor of it does it outweigh the probative value? I think if they had completely cut off that testimony, then you're right. It needs to come in, and I think the defense has their right. But since they got into the information relative to attacking the credibility of the testifying witness, why drag in the other people? And I think the judge did that exact balancing. You can get into it, but I'm not going. I think the prejudicial effect on these two other people outweighs any probative value.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Boy, I mean, if I was that rapper, I'd be a little concerned getting called as a witness. I'm sure he has had sleepless nights.
Well, you never know, because most people say any publicity is good publicity, right? So maybe
right.
Who knows?
Right. I mean, the Punisher, remember the entertainer that came in and testified? I mean, he's now kind of it was good PR for him, apparently. So, Tommy,
wasn't Cato, wasn't he the name of the O.J. Simpson, the house guest?
Cato, yes. Oh my God. Yeah, he's actually a friend of mine. Yes, he has the podcast. You know, he was on Dr. Phil not too long ago with me about, and I think it was the Murdoch case. But he's famous. I mean, and he was a house guest. Tommy, so after there was this like long delay this morning,
Yeah.
Combs was reportedly, I don't know, appeared to be very annoyed and irritated, was very, animated with his hands, talking to his lawyers. Any idea what set him off? And have we seen him this agitated before?
No, this was weird, and we really thought that there was a chance that whatever was going on in the robing room was going to lead to him getting admonished again. We thought he might be getting tossed from court, like was threatened a few days ago, because his whole team crowded around him. At first, it was just a few of them, and then it was all of them, and they crowded around him, and it looked like they were very much talking at him. And then he was sitting there going, "No, you don't understand." Like I don't know what he was saying, but he was sitting there.
But it looked like he's disagreeing.
Right. It was a lot of hand movement and a lot of nodding and pointing. It was more body language than I have seen from him, certainly since he was told to stop nodding at the jury, and probably for the duration of the trial. We were all super confused, and so the fact that it ended up just being "don't name this rapper" was a little bit underwhelming, to be honest with you.
Okay. Well, okay, Mark, the defense asked Jane about a fight with Combs in June of 2024, a night that I think she describes as the worst night of her life. It appears that the defense has elicited self-defense testimony. Jane said, she essentially started it. She punched Combs, or I believe he was tying his shoelace or something, and then she rammed his head into a hard surface. And then, and at some point, I guess she punched him in the shower. Long story short, she was the instigator. It was clear from her testimony. So once you take violence out of this relationship, I mean, we've got to worry about force, coercion, or fraud, right? So once you take violence out of this equation, that force is gone, which was what we had with Cassie. And if, we've seen the awful video related to Cassie, because there was absolutely abuse in that relationship. But what about this fight with Jane? I mean, isn't the first aggressor theory something that's going to be fodder for the defense?
Oh, absolutely. And it's more foundational even than that. Remember, first of all, force is not just physical force. I mean, that's the focus for right now, but financial force, emotional force, all of that. And they've gotten, look, this is what they've been doing for the past couple of 3 weeks, is trying to show that Diddy, through everything that he has and everything that he does, exerts duress, coercion, physical, emotional, financial force. And what the defense did was come in and go, look, you want to talk about force? It's her. So it is not Diddy. And in effect, this is the first time we really see the defense bring out non-force, non-duration, right? This is him being attacked. You're going to hear this time and time again. They bring her out to show you that he's the aggressor, that he's the one using force or coercion and duress. And yet here's what's really going on. Because all they really have to do, as we know, the three of us very well, they do not have to win the case by proving anything other than there's a reasonable doubt here as to whether or not P. Diddy did what they're saying he did, the way they're saying he did it. And here's an example. You're going to hear the word reasonable doubt and Jane talking about being the one who smashed him in the face and bounced him in the shower. That nugget is what they're going to try and turn into at least one of the threads of reasonable doubt.
Yeah, and it's interesting because speaking of emotional force, she also testified about playing the hotel card or the hotel night card, which is she threatened him. I guess he was on vacation with another woman. That's always been a problem for her. And she said to him, "You better cut this short and get back right now, or there ain't going to be any more hotel nights." So she's I see her as very different than Cassie. She was older, and she was definitely in a transactional relationship that she knew it was polyamorous. I mean, to me, if no means no, then yes means yes, so it'll be interesting to see how the jury takes this, because obviously, Mark, as you know well, when the jury thinks that the defendant is despicable, right, and he's a pig and he's a wife beater and he's an awful human being, that sort of clouds the doubt that clouds the case.
No,
Right?
it absolutely does. And that's what the government has been doing for the entirety of their presentation, is to show who he is, what he uses, the people he uses, the money he uses, the threats he uses, the sex he uses, the power he uses to get what he wants. And they're going to say that is the definition of sex trafficking. That's where they're going. So when you see a Jane to come in going, I'll do this for you if I get that, or I'll smack you in the face if I want to, or if you don't come back right now, service me, whatever it might be, then you're not going to have another hotel night with me. That is an equalizing of the power position.
Exactly.
Right? That's exactly what the defense is trying to do.
That's exactly right. And Stacey Honowitz was on last night, and she made a good point. She goes, the baseline is consent. These are women that have relationships with him. This is not a Hollywood couch Harvey Weinstein situation. So the jurors are thinking, she's a girlfriend, and then the prosecution is chipping away at showing all of these, horrible abuses of power, blackmailing with the freak off videos, and, to the more extreme stuff like blowing up Cuddy's car, which I don't think they were able to prove that. It was very speculative. But Tommy, we know that Jane was an important witness for the prosecution. Obviously, they put her on as a victim, but after days of cross-examination by the defense, how do you think that she fared in the eyes of the jury? Were you getting any reactions? Were you reading the room at all?
Yeah, I think that the general sentiment for this one, I mean, obviously, I don't know how the jury is feeling, but I think the general sentiment within the courtroom and the overflow room that I observed was that this was not nearly as effective of a witness for the prosecution as perhaps some of the other victims have been. I think that I spoke to someone today in the overflow room who said that where she 100% believed everything that Mia said, for example, and I know that you didn't, but she did. And she said that this was just angry ex-girlfriend, essentially. And I think that there are a lot of times when, for example, today, one of the things that Jane said was on the cross-examination was that she just didn't understand why they couldn't have a compromise. They would do the hotel nights and she would get to go on trips. And the fact that it's sad that she got duped, obviously. She thought she was going to get these vacations. Well, it's sad that she feels as though she's been duped, but at the end of the day, I think I'm agreeing with you here in that she had a long time to realize he wasn't holding up his end of the bargain. And it's very sad. And relationships are a tricky thing. I'm certainly not going to sit here and say that she should have left. She should have known better. Hindsight is 20/20, but it definitely feels to me as though something that the jury might take note of is, okay, clearly she wanted these things and now she's upset that she didn't get them.
Well, yeah. And I mean, we all know men who say, hey, I don't want a girlfriend. Okay. I'm not in a committed relationship. And the woman still hopes that it'll be different. If she sleeps with more men to please him, maybe it'll change his mind. No, girl, you knew what you were getting into, And so, look, Mark, I was telling Tommy always laughs at me when I bring this up because I bring it up all the time. My mama told me there's no such thing as a free lunch. I mean, your rent is being paid, your lifestyle is being paid, you're getting very expensive handbags. I think she got a couple of trips at the end, but there's a lot of relationships like this.
And like Tommy said, it was transactional. And when that comes across to the jury, they're going to say, what is this witness doing here? What does she provide to do away with reasonable doubt? And she didn't. I think she gave them some because she came in and say, look, one way to look at this very against the prosecution is why would you bring on a witness who is not going to assist in doing away with reasonable doubt and is actually going to give Diddy and his team to say, this witness who was transactional, all of his witnesses that they presented were transactional, even Cassie. Yes, there was the violence you can't ignore because of the videotape, but even that, Cassie did pretty well with the recording situation.
She was in it and she stuck around and put up with it because of her career. Yeah, right. And just being in his orbit. And she was a public relationship. He was out on red carpets with her, and he showcased her. She was an artist with his label. This one is really resentful because she was like a secret. She was in the hotel rooms, and so there's a lot of resentment there. And I think the defense is going to argue it. The jury was also shown text messages, Mark, suggesting Jane's resentment and remorse over the relationship with Combs. She texted him that she had wasted 3 years of her life in hotel rooms. We just talked about this. Resentful that she seemed to have gotten less out of her relationship with Combs than perhaps the other women in his life. And in one text, she wrote, "At least say that you understand it wasn't cool to have me just doing hotel nights and everyone got private jets all over the world. I don't even have anything post-worthy from our relationship." And then she goes on to say, "My dumbass thought if I effed more and did more hotels, I'd finally get a trip." I mean, if this doesn't underscore a consensual transactional relationship, I don't know what does.
No, absolutely right. And it also shows that she's a bit vengeful for having not gotten any of that. And that is going to impact on her testimony, certainly is going to impact on her testimony when the defense team starts arguing that to the jury.
Yeah. And that's why she's here testifying. Well, she got subpoenaed, but anyway, do you think this also contradicts the rest of her testimony that would go to coercion for the prosecution? I mean, how do you think is she a coerced, sex trafficked woman or a resentful side chick in the eyes of the jury?
Door number two. I mean, it comes across as door number two, right? That she was subpoenaed, but she could have been subpoenaed and testified impartially. She came in with a vengeful act towards P. Diddy, was going to tag him as she tagged him in the text messages. "I'm angry. I didn't get it. I didn't even come up with anything post-worthy." How do you say that?
I know.
And come in front of a jury and say, "Please believe every word I said. I'm telling you the absolute truth. And I don't really have any vengefulness towards P. Diddy. I'm just speaking the truth." When her text messages and her other testimony
tell a different story.
I do think that it's something that I've been saying in regards to her testimony is that it's really interesting because you hear her saying aloud in court, one, how much she still loves him, wishes the best for him, whatever. And two, in court out loud, she says, "I did not want these things. I did not want these things. I did not want them." But then you look at the texts, and the texts do tell a different story. In the text, she is agreeing. And it doesn't really matter how many times afterwards she says, "Oh, I know what I said in the text, but that's not what I meant to say. I said it because it's what he wanted to hear." At the end of the day, that's what the jury has to go off of. And
correct.
Yes, they can ask to hear her testimony again. They can be read the transcript. But the thing that to my understanding, they take back into the room with them are the texts. They see the text. They
great point, Tommy. Great point, Tommy. And also the scope and nature of these texts matter too. When your texts are like on and on conversations about how much you care for him and how much fun last night was. I mean, it's very detailed. It's not, people text differently, right? Some people text like little blurb shorthand. These are it's like, what, you just left that part out? I mean,
No.
I think it's very much telling a different. I mean, there are a lot of witnesses whose text messages told a different story in this case.
Well, and we know reasonable doubt can come from a conflict in the evidence, and she presented a whole bunch of conflict.
Yeah, and it takes one juror, right? It takes one juror. Mark, while I have you here, where is the conspiracy to racketeer?
A few days into me looking at the trial, I said that they need to start getting their act together, right? I think I used the example of building a house, right? You clear the land, you lay the footers, and then you start building the walls and you make them strong. I don't know where the racketeering is yet. I know they're going to argue what racketeering is, an easy way to get a conviction. And as long as he's doing all of these things to more than one person, that could be racketeering. But I don't see a lot of strength in the racketeering. They're barely getting to the sex trafficking, in my opinion. The racketeering, I just don't really see yet. I think we're going to see it in the argument. I'm not sure we're going to see it in much more testimony.
Well, here's what I'm thinking. They have a ton of predicate acts, right? And they have pattern, and they have a means and method of the enterprise. The enterprise, I mean, you had the CFO or whatever testify about all these businesses and all that. Okay, maybe all of them comprise an enterprise, but a criminal enterprise. And this is the charge as a conspiracy to racketeer. So it's a racketeering conspiracy. So where's the other person? And there's two people that I think are likely co-conspirators. One is that Christina Coram, who was his chief of staff. The other one is D-Rock, which was head of security.
And where are they?
Where are they?
Where are they?
Yeah. So that's interesting. I don't know if that's like the grand finale of bringing in the co-conspirators to testify, because without it, I don't think they've made their case.
I tend to agree. I mean, you don't have to have the co-conspirators in there, but it's much better if you do. And even just the testimony that these other people were assisting him, and there's a lot of testimony about that with both D-Rock and the chief of staff, whatever she was. They have it.
Wait, Mark, what do you mean they don't need co-conspirators? Because the charge is conspiracy to racketeer.
Right, but I don't think that they need a co-conspirator to walk in and say, "Oh yes, I co-conspired with this guy."
I mean, they'll have to argue that he conspired with all his assistants and all the people.
I think they're going to say is he's the head. And by the way, you heard testimony about D-Rock. You heard testimony about the chief of staff. I'm getting her position wrong. Yeah, you heard that testimony, and those are the people who helped him with his criminal conspiracy, because they were the ones who did what he told them to do. So what I was saying, they don't need to walk in and go, "Yes, I'm a co-conspirator," because I think the prosecution is going to be arguing that to the jury in closing.
Yeah. What a litmus test for the Me Too movement, right? I think this case is. And I think that he's probably good on the prostitution charge. The other two more serious ones, I'm not convinced. Mark O'Mara, thank you for joining me. It's always a great conversation with you. Please do come back, because I would love to talk to you more about this and other cases. And Tommy, thanks for bringing us the latest from the courthouse. That's it for tonight. Thank you to our viewers. We are on this case every night, so please tune in, follow us, and stay with NewsNation on the Diddy trial.
Take care, guys.